Hello and welcome to the final episode of Six Nations Weekly 2025 as we look back on Super Saturday and the tournament at large as France claimed a second title in the Fabien Galthie era. Joining me this St. Patrick's weekend to discuss it all is a returning panel of Adam Latham and David Cordial. Gentlemen, you're very welcome back to the show. Look, we'll skip the pleasantries because not a lot to be pleasant about on a Sunday like this. The last 2 years I recorded this show, Ireland were champions. Like it was so much fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
But no, finally we're not this time. We will start though with Ireland, who finish with a victory despite a pretty flawed performance in Rome. For being honest, Adam again skip the pleasantries, another win, but a third place finish, damn squid performance. Your thoughts not only on yesterday but Ireland's championship as a whole.
I think we put it lightly in the group chat as like we showed massive player fatigue. We're flogging out the same players. There's not enough sort of rejigging in this Ireland squad. I think you can see that from the primary basis of yes, we've got three very good centers in Robbie Henshaw, Gary Ringrose, and Bundyaki. However, we need more to come in, slot in. We need more players to slot in those type of roles. I think Gary Ringrose had a bit of a shocker yesterday. Um, as did most of the team. I think there was at one point, I think it was the 78th minute, where Italy made a break, and I thought this is probably going to be the one that they score because there was they I think it's a game that they lost rather than we won. They played very well. I think they played such an exciting brand of rugby that Ireland we show cracks, especially in attack. I think for our first try, we just started to just rumble the ball. We just picked and goed, picked and goed, picked and goed. We always got launched back on ourselves, which I find a big issue. And then as soon as we have a pass out to the backs, Hugo Keenan dotted over for a try. But I don't know why we're not utilizing our backs more. We've got a very good back line. In that first half, we had a very good back line, but we didn't utilize them nearly as much as we did with somebody like Prendergast. I don't know why that was a thing. We sort of just used that forward pack too much, and we sort of got fatigued towards the end. Even with Italy down to they were playing most of the game with 14 men. I think it was about a good 30 minutes with 14 men. Um, and we still struggled. We still looked really fatigued. We still yes, we got a bonus point. The two missed conversion kicks. It wouldn't really have flattered us in a sense in the score sheet. But yeah, this championship has been weird. I think it's sort of like shipping out the old and bringing in the new. When we have three stalwarts in Cian Healy, Murray, and Peter O'Mahony, who's been in Ireland's squad since their debuts, they've been consistently there. I have a feeling that we need to look on and we need to build now in the summer tour. Uh, just
And we'll
genuinely,
we'll
but
get to that in a bit
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's absolutely a factor
yeah,
because Ireland had three stalwarts
yeah,
finish up yesterday, but one debutant in the last five
yeah.
weeks. And I'm not saying to change your entire squad, but
No.
that's part of the problem because when Ireland play a next serious fixture, and I mean this with the greatest respect to the summer tour, it's going to be very important if used right. But when
Mm.
Ireland play another serious fixture, it's going to be against New Zealand in Chicago. That's not going to be used for rotation. They play South
No.
Africa in the same test bracket. I, if I'm entirely honest, and I am looking up Ireland's Autumn Series fixtures to see what the other two games are because I cannot
I
remember for the
think
life of me.
I think it's Argentina. Is it Argentina?
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. Ireland will face Japan, Australia, South Africa.
Oh, it's
So realistically, there's one chance for rotation there. We're not going to do it against Australia. Australia are a good team. My concern would be where Ireland are at now is not ready to beat New Zealand or
mm,
South Africa. That is
no.
my concern. And I look, people say, "Oh, you want them to lose. You want something to talk about." I don't. Like, I actually don't want Ireland to lose. I want them to kick on. I want them to be the best team in the Six Nations for 5 years straight. Do you know? And the reality is, when you look back at 2020 to 2025, it's actually France have beaten us
Yeah.
4 out of 6 campaigns. Which
Mhm.
I'll be honest, hold my hands up. I actually didn't realize until I went to look into it. I thought it'd be like 3-3. Do you know? I thought
Yeah.
it was actually going to be deadlocked. I hadn't realized they had. finished higher in 2020
I
because
think. Oh, sorry.
we're both going for the title that on that night.
Yeah.
COVID, no one remembers. It's fine, but it is a very precarious point for Ireland now, where struggled against Wales. Granted, not the
Mhm.
same Wales that turned up yesterday. That's very fair to say. I mean, like, um, absolutely destroyed by France, and then Italy probably could have beaten us, and we'll get on to that in a minute. But you're going to say there, Adam.
I think with the summer tour needs to be like one of those springboards where I said yesterday on the group chat that we had before the podcast about not like giving players international experience in those camps is completely vital. And I don't think we've seen, because we see these extended squads get put out and we see loads of players getting brought in, but we're not
Mm.
seeing any sort of follow on to that. Think of how many. I'm gonna pick out a player like Nick Timoney. How many Ireland squads have he been in? How many Ireland squads has he been in to not eventually get picked?
He
There's
hasn't he
loads of
hasn't been
there's
captain since 2022, despite
and
being
he's
in every squad last year and
exactly.
called up this year.
I think there's a like it's either that he's not getting the system or there's something. Do you know what I mean? Like he's still getting picked, so he must know something about the system.
Yeah.
We need to like expand. I think we start need to be. I think we've got a pretty big depth issue. Um,
Well,
not only well,
is it? Is it a
I,
depth problem, or is it that we don't know because we haven't
well,
tried, guys? Because I
yeah,
look at it, right, and obviously everyone's going to have their own position on things, but I actually think you take centre as a snapshot. We have four brilliant, brilliant centres.
yeah,
You can't convince me that if we hadn't capped, obviously James Hume has got a handful of caps disrupted by
yeah,
injuries.
hmm
If James Hume, Tom Farrell, Jude Postlewaite, Hugh Cooney, fucking
yeah,
who else am I missing? Like Call Ford,
yeah.
I'm forgetting someone.
Even
I know I'm forgetting
even
someone obvious here on that
yeah,
list because I always do. But if those lads had been capped,
yeah,
you won't convince me that Ireland would have lost the game because those lads would have been capped or would have been in the squad. That's where I'm kind of balancing, and I'm like, I actually think we do
yeah,
have depth. I think it's so easy to look at depth and say, well, we don't have it because Ulster lost to Zebra or Munster lost to Zebra.
yeah.
Conveniently, thanks guys, just so we could sync it up. But that's not really the issue because
I,
ultimately, 2 years ago, when Connacht were in the URC semi-final and Munster won the URC and Ulster got to the URC semi-final the year before, they didn't get any more extra players in camp.
no,
So
no.
that's the other side of it.
Like I think given more international cap, well, not no international caps for the sake of international caps. However, I do think that we were, not to like bash on Leinster or anything, they are top of the URC, but but yeah, we'll see in
For
April
for
when
our audio
we get
listeners, David was that's the happiest he has been all morning.
yeah, I have to do that because apparently I'm a secret dub as well. But it's my mom's from anyway.
You've
But
explained it, good.
yeah, but I think we look at the bench and we look at the likes of like Jack Boyle and Clarkson coming and like Gus McCarthy, for example. We're using players that are fourth choice at province level, third, fourth choice at province level. We've got um, we've got loads of players in Ulster, Munster, and Connacht that we need to look into for these front rowers. Like Scotty Wilson is a great example of a player that's going to excel once he gets his scrummaging straight because he is a bit shaky in the scrums. But we've got another type of like a prop that we need that is quite elusive, quite freeing. He likes to run with the ball. He likes making hits. Do you know what I mean? Like we can't have Andrew Porter play 70 minutes against the likes of New Zealand and Chicago in November. And
Well, I think that's the one bonus to the fact that and I tweeted about this, that Jack Boyle got streamlined or fast tracked, whatever the word is, because he's a very good young player.
yeah,
We haven't seen enough of a sample size to say what his deficiencies are or his strengths are. Good around the park, I give him that. But to your recent point or your previous point, the issue is why haven't other guys been fast tracked with a
yeah.
similar athletic profile? Because obviously Scott Wilson is the one that everyone goes to. Yes, his
I think
scrummaging isn't great, but at the same time, Tom Clarkson's not a refined scrummager. He's still very young.
no,
Um, I think Jack Ainger is a good player. He's quite a bit older. Wasn't a refined scrummager at the same age. Like scrummaging is typically something that takes a while of
yeah,
a few years of senior rugby.
Yeah.
kick on. And David, I want to get you in on this one because look, we could talk about the match and we will talk about it for a bit, but ultimately this Six Nations feels like a case of, well, if we weren't going to win it, I'd have at least rather lose it with a few different faces as opposed to just the one. And like, it's a horrible way to talk about losing, but it is the typical fan attitude as well.
Yeah, it is. It in a lot of ways. I think it's easy to forget that the Six Nations essentially followed the same tenor as last season. So, this year we finished
Mm.
third, last year we finished first, but from a functional top-down point of view, absencing the quality of the actual work being played, we basically performed the same. We had 4 wins from 5. Won our first 3 games, lost our fourth, and then the fifth was a major slog. I don't know if anyone remembers the Scotland performance in the League last year. I think the final score in that
Yeah,
game was
yeah,
15-13.
yeah.
Very tense. And it wasn't very tense because it was an arm wrestle. It was very tense because it looked like we were struggling.
Very defensive focused, if people remember, like
Just it was a game we
very
didn't
well
want
shut
to
down.
it was a game we didn't want to lose rather than a game we wanted to win.
Mhm.
This year France and England have come on, for England beating Scotland for the first time in I don't know how many seasons at this stage it is that Scotland had their number
I
four, and
think
then
it's 4 years.
yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
right. And
yeah,
then France, I think the team that should be most annoyed at the end of this tournament, ironically, is France because
yeah.
they won it, but they really should have had a Grand Slam. To lose by a point to England on a day when Dupont and Penno just decided to forget how to catch a ball is gonna be a frustrating one for them. But at the end of the day, they do get
Happens
to
to the
win.
best of us.
It does. The the
Shows he's
the
human.
the conversation about seeing more players come in, it's a fair one, except for the fact that we didn't know we were going to lose until we lost to France. Up until then, we're winning. If we lost out the gate the first game, or God forbid we lost the first 2 games, you could maybe see an argument for we're going to switch it up a lot more. The irony is going into this weekend. Technically speaking, Ireland could still have won the tournament, and they did what they needed to do against Italy in the most abject fashion possible. It's the worst game I've ever seen where the team winning has won by four
Yeah,
tries.
yeah, yeah,
It was appalling. But at the end of the day,
yeah.
they came out of it with 5 match points.
I'm
If
gonna raise
Wales,
I'm gonna raise a question there. Do you
yeah,
not remember Wales's Jam Slam?
oh,
Taylor
Oh,
Van
that's
oh
true.
Forest as
no,
well.
yeah, that
That's
was,
true. Wales
yeah,
in that case, they favored attaching a head contact magnet to, I think it was their loose
Samson
head prop
Young.
that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, people kept hitting him in the head, and they just kept getting people down to 14 men. And this was before we had 20-minute red cards, so it actually meant something back then. But yeah, no, it was just at the end of the day, we got our 5 match points and we got out of it. And if it looks very unlikely at this side of the coin because of how abjectly it went for them, if Wales had beaten England, if Scotland had beaten France, Ireland would have won. So I think from that point of view, they felt they had to go for it today. I think what's depressing and distressing for an Ireland supporter is that we did go for it. We put out the strongest team we had, rotated Jack Crowley in. Gary Ringrose comes back from his suspension, Hansen and Lowe are back on the wings, and we still looked terrible. Yeah,
yeah.
going forward, it seemed like we were incredibly uncomfortable in possession. In open phase play, it was never particularly clear what it was we were trying to do. Crowley himself actually was one of the only people who made a break. I remember in the first half, he did a loop play and broke up the left hand side. I think that run of play ended in a knock on, and that was one of the most frustrating things for me in a day when we weren't playing well. When players did do something like that, James Lowe had a moment up the middle of the field where he picked the ball off. He seemed to be in a very intercepty mood yesterday. I
Yeah,
think he picked off
yeah.
3 or 4 balls where it wasn't clear that how he'd done it. Um,
I think some of that might be on Garbisi, but we'll move
yeah,
on.
picks the ball off in the middle of the field, offloads it to James Ryan, and James Ryan knocks it on straight away. It's just, we talk about on ball, off ball rugby. We talk about coaching, and Andrew Goodman is in there as the attack coach now. Questionable where our attack is going at this stage. But this is just catch pass skills. This is just being able
Yeah.
to pass the ball and catch a ball. That shouldn't be something that lads who, and these aren't this isn't a green team. This isn't a team full of people who only have 10 caps. This is a team of
Mhm.
hardened, experienced professionals. 50 cap players in there. We have Centurions in there. These lads should know how to catch a ball. That shouldn't be
Yeah.
what's tripping us up when we finally do manage to make a bit of inroad. The real thing about that game is that Italy weren't great. They had 1 or 2 good moments, but overall they
Mhm.
weren't great. They seemed insistent on giving away as many cards as they could. I think it finished with a yellow, a red, and then the bunker review. I didn't see what the actual result of that was
Uh,
because was that upgraded in the end because he got the that one in I think it was the
the
78th minute.
yeah.
Um,
I don't think that
so
was bunker.
was that not
I'm not
bunker?
sure. I no, I think he just gave the yellow for that at the
Okay,
end.
so
Yeah, yeah.
two yellows and a red. Um, like
Well,
that.
but that's part of it then as well, though, David, isn't it? Because Italy would have spent 25 minutes of this game
Yeah,
down a man, and Ireland
yeah,
won it by 5 points. And
Mhm.
the thing that we said before the game, and I like to be consistent, I don't like to jump back and forth. But the question I asked to Owen on Thursday was, "This is probably, I think it was Owen, but Owen or BHH. This is probably the strongest Irish team we've seen face Italy in a long time,
Yeah,
but it's the narrowest margin of victory."
yeah,
yeah,
And sometimes, and I do use this phrase a lot, sometimes you just have to look at sport in the simplest terms. And that kind of stands out to you as like, yeah, it's not ideal. Because if Italy had won this game, kind of like the 20s the night before, you couldn't have had any complaints. Less so yesterday, I will
yeah.
say. But you couldn't have had any complaints. And kind of
no,
like, I'll give you the floor on Italy then, David, because it was probably their best performance, their championship. You could include the Wales game, but obviously that game was just so meek and just awful to watch. But they played well, defended well. Yes, they made a lot of stupid mistakes. They did a fairly decent job of shutting down Ireland. Like Ireland's ruck speed dropped again, having been pretty fast. Like I remember last week, one of the buzzwords on the coverage was Ireland didn't play well because their ruck speed was slow, but it was faster than the other three games. So that was not the issue. Whereas in this game, it actually was slow. And Gibson Park looked like a man who, look, Gibson Park has been very good for Ireland for 2 or 3 years now. He looked like a lad who'd never played nine before. It was one
Yeah.
of those games, and like a lot of players had that vibe about them. And I'd never, ever question professional sports stars' mentality because I'm here recording a podcast talking about them. Like it's not the inverse. But you do wonder where Ireland just not up to the level as much as Italy were at that level. And that's kind of
Yeah.
where I'll let you start off.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think Italy always have the unenviable advantage of having spent quite a lot of time with their backs to the wall. It's not a position they're uncomfortable with. And it almost the inverse. I think it was 2 seasons ago they were odds on favourite to beat Wales because they were the better team and they managed to lose it. And I think on that
Mhm.
day the
Mhm.
burden of being favourites really went to their head. They're much more comfortable being underdogs. Yeah, it wasn't. It was a like yes. They we didn't. I would be hesitant to say Italy played very well. I thought they played all right. I thought both teams didn't play particularly well.
Mhm.
Um, Italy's defense was serviceable in that they didn't get whitewashed, and it's going to stand out that they didn't. That when France and England came up against them, they did a hell of a lot of damage. I think that's for me that's an indictment of Ireland and Ireland's attacking style. That once again, you know, unless we seem to, you know, I think it was 3 tries Dan Sheehan scored. Great for Dan Sheehan, but like we're scoring tries off the back of walls. We're not making breaks. We're not, you know, except for Jack Crowley actually offloading twice. One of them overruled for a previous knock on, but carrying to the line and offloading to Hugo Keenan. Those tries, even over the course of this tournament, those are the rarity. Those haven't been the tries we've been scoring off the back of rucks and from close pick and goes.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think Italy have become better game managers over the years. It was something they used to lack. They used to capitulate quite hard, and if things went against them, they'd just lose it. And suddenly you would be doing what France did. You'd be running in massive scores against them. They've got better at
Mhm.
managing games, and they have a couple of star players. I He almost ruined our day the way he ruined Wales a couple of days ago or a couple of years ago. But having someone like Andrew Capozzo in your back line, who's a player who can just turn it on. He can make things happen, kind of like James Lowe is for Ireland. Obviously, completely different physically, but in their capacity to when nothing is really on to make something happen. Um, their centre partnership is enviable.
Oh yeah.
Menoncello, I think, has been touted as an option for a player of the tournament. He's just phenomenal. Brex doesn't look like a centre, and he certainly doesn't look as fast as he actually is. So I
Mhm.
thought, yeah, they'll be frustrated that he didn't do more damage against an Ireland team who on the day didn't show up and didn't really feel like they had the mentality for it. And it's disappointing because it was on the final weekend of the championship. I guess for this Ireland team, it was frustrating that their destiny wasn't in their hands. We could win the game by 5 points, and we did, and ultimately it didn't matter. We still finished third. But it'll be frustrating for them that they didn't have more to play for on that day. It'll be frustrating for the 30,000 Irish fans who flew over that they didn't have more to play for on the day, and for the likes of a Peter O'Mahony and a Conor Murray
Yeah.
who at least they got a win on their final day, but they probably deserved a little bit more.
And a
It's
civic reception, you could nearly call it. It was fantastic. And I suppose if we had more time and we're a little bit tight today, we'd probably talk about the fact that the atmosphere there was brilliant, the best that
Yeah.
we've seen since the
Yeah.
2023 World Cup. And the
Yeah.
question mark should not be, are ticket prices too high in Dublin? It's, are they getting to the right people? Is there a case to be made that people will
Yeah.
actually spend this money if tickets were more readily available?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, having priced it, I priced this trip. A weekend in Rome is not, it's not expensive. Or sorry, it's not cheap. So it is a question. But Adam, just your overall thoughts, and we kind of touched on it there. When it comes to the summer, and this is where we debated this in the group chat that we had, it's not about whether Ireland just rotate. The bigger question is probably, do Ireland do an emerging Ireland tour, which won't be beneficial for about 2 years,
Yeah.
or do they look at the second layer of talent? And you're talking Jack Boyle, Tom O'Toole, Gus McCarthy, guys like this, and so on and so forth. Guys who are very clearly on the
Yeah.
periphery, and scale them up so that if we need them in the autumn, they are ready to go.
Yeah.
Where do you think Ireland will go, and which way would you go?
I would quite like, after the sort of the debate that we had, I'd quite like the second string option. I think with the likes of like Gus McCarthy at hooker, Tom Stewart would also have a bit of game time in there as well. I would argue he's been struggling with injury. I think O'Toole, the experiment is still there, as we say. He's young. He's not. He's not that he's not great at loose head. It's just that we're trying him more at loose head. I think we're willing to try him more at loose head. I'd rather have Prendergast for the Ireland tour than the Lions tour. I'd rather just have him in the Ireland setup because I'm talking because he will probably get picked in this Lions tour. It's one of those things that might just happen. I think, but I'd rather him being in the Ireland setup to get used to different players around him, rather than just getting comfortable off like playing off the likes of like Craig Casey on one side for him. Do you know what I mean? Like the Craig Caseys that go to that tour, we need to have, as you say, a strong second stream so that our benches don't look like, I'm not bashing him, but Cian Healy for most of this tournament was on the bench, and Tag Furlong, who was in the squad but only got fit for yesterday to be on the bench and play 30 minutes. That's not, in my opinion, very beneficial to the Ireland setup at all in terms of game management and how Andrew Porter will play 70 minutes. Do you know what I mean? We need to find these players this summer, and we need to also blood them essentially in November as well. I understand like we need to play a full strength team against the likes of New Zealand and South Africa, but I'd almost argue that Australia, we can play a full strength team. However, we normally tend to test out players. I'm thinking like Prendergast this season was tested out against Australia. A couple of years ago, it was Gary Ringrose. Do you know what I mean? We can afford to look at blooding in a couple of different players to make them more comfortable to the bigger games, because I think it hasn't been confirmed yet, but the summer tours to Portugal, isn't it? Portugal,
Portugal and
Georgia,
Georgia, I believe.
and possibly Romania. I don't know if they've.
That's a
That was
question mark, but yeah.
Yeah, but we need to have like Georgia would be beneficial for our scrum. That's when we test out the loose head and the tight head props. Do you know what I mean? Like Georgia love a scrum. We do that there. We test out different backs in Portugal. But that's why I think Prendergast would absolutely benefit from a summer tour like this, because Georgia aren't small. Do you know what I mean? They're not small, they're a big pack. He needs to get bullied a bit more. I think he was sort of like a deer in headlights moment for him in the France game. Um, because I think we just need to push him, push him, push him, push him. Because if he is eventually going to be the 10 for Ireland, which at the minute it looks like he is, with Jack Crawley also being there to battle it out, we need him more hardened. We're sort of we are going to protect him. It's only the way that it will go, but I'd say we need to look at that betting that second team, and we need to look at it really quickly. Because as I said, as we say, it's the likes of that bench yesterday. Having three of the provinces represented in one team, despite Ulster, I think only having 39 of the 440 minutes played of the Six Nations. There was only two Ulster players, and they only represented 39 of the minutes. I think we need to start looking at what Ireland can do to help it be four provinces again, because we are just looking like a Leinster team without the players that they have. RG Snyman, that he's replaced by Tag Byrne, um, where they would have different centres in like Jordy Barrett. They would that would be Bundyaki. Do you know what I mean? They are looking at the issue is that we look like Leinster without without the internationals that they brought in, and it's not necessarily an issue, but it's just about bleeding in more teams. That squad is looking nice, to be fair.
I just cut across here. So for anyone audio, I've shared my summer squad that's going to be live tomorrow. I think I'm going to put it up on Twitter. And I'll just read it out. So I've gone with Jack Boyle, Tom O'Toole, Jeremy Luckman, Ronan Keller, Gus McCarthy, Jim Barron, Tom Clarkson, Jack Ainger, Scott Wilson, Ollie Yeager. I'm going to preface this now. Anyone who is in the first Ireland 23 that's not here, I'm taking is probably going to be in the lines. So
Mhm.
there you go. Ryan Baird, Tom Ahern, Cormac Izuchukwu, Evan O'Connell, Darren Murray. Max Deegan, James McNamee, Keane Prendergast, Alex Condellan, John Hodner, Dave McCann. I've gone with Brian Gleeson, along with Gavin Coombs. Could easily go with Sean Jansen. That one is a toss of a coin for me. It depends on who impressed more with the Ireland XV. I can't remember what it was. I have Craig Casey, Ben Murphy, Matthew Devine, and Fintan Gunn, Sam Prendergast, Jack Crowley, and Kieran Frawley. Captain Stuart McCluskey, that's Adam didn't pick this, I swear to God. Carl Ford, Jude Postlethwaite, Hugh Cooney, and James Hume. Then I have Calvin Nash, Jimmy O'Brien, Tommy O'Brien, Shane Bolton, Jacob Stockton, and Jamie Osborne. Now, there's a good chance it's just a two-man panel or two-game tour, so we won't see a squad this big. That squad is 40. We won't if it's only two games. But David, I think the general sentiment among fans is this is the type of squad they'd like to see because we've seen emerging Ireland. We've seen full-strength Ireland. Now let's give a chance to, as I've said, let's scale up Jack Boyle, Gus McCarthy, Cormac Izuchukwu, uh, Gavin Coombs if he's back in the fray, Max Deegan if he's back in the fray, Craig, obviously the tens, Ford, Postlethwaite, and basically any of those back three. I think they've all
Yeah.
been involved in Ireland camp recently. This is kind of the direction that people feel like we should be going with Ireland. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting squad. It'd be a missed opportunity in a Lions year. Lions year is always kind of funny because you're missing your well, you hope you're missing your frontline players. Um, it'll I hope that we get as many games out of it as possible. Obviously, situations that are much larger than rugby in both Georgia and Romania could throw a spanner in the works. If we had to settle for if we get three test tour of just Portugal, that'd be fantastic. Because I think they play some really nice rugby and their attack could put a team under proper stress there.
And call a spade a
Um,
spade. Great away trip.
oh,
Oh
fantastic!
yeah.
Very easy
Oh.
sell to the girlfriend to go. Yeah, let's spend a few weeks in Portugal. Um,
I'm just
so
gonna clip that up and put it up on TikTok. Anyway, let's go.
yeah, I'll send it to her. So yeah, no, that would be great. This kind of squad, it's an interesting squad. You always want to try and keep. I mean, you don't need that many players from the front line, but enough. I suppose if you have the tens, Prendergast and Crowley there, then at least you have some sense of the greater squad. You have Jimmy O'Brien and Jacob Stockdale and Calvin Nash, who I suppose also, and Jamie Osborne, who've also featured a lot in Ireland. Ronan Kelleher. Um, yeah, it'd be a good squad to. The more obviously predicated on being able to get good game minutes into all the lads involved. The thing that I would always be wary of, and I suppose it's a problem that emerging Ireland falls into, or I think that can hold players back from that, is if we essentially have two squads, the squad that we send on emerging Ireland and the senior squad, and never the two shall meet. It just makes it more difficult for those players, I think, sometimes to make the transition across because then they're in that second tier, and you want to see Tom Hearn bed down next to um James Ryan. You want to see Alex
Mm.
Kendall as Cadell on the opposite side of the scrum from Josh van der Fleer or pairing off with Caelan Doris, and then Jude Postlethwaite alongside, probably not Aki, he's going to the end of his career, but like that kind
Mm.
of thing. You want to see how they're going to pair up, because in a realistic scenario, you're not going to put out a team entirely from this squad in a November series, even for a Fiji game or a Japan game. So it
I
may
might actually just make a change on that one. I've pulled it off the screen there. I'm gonna make a bold one, potentially. I might take out Kieran Frawley and put in Charlie Tector. I think he is
Yeah,
having a fantastic season and would be well deserving.
it would be an
Um,
interesting one, but I think not that I would push back on it, because I don't think that's an unfair decision to make. But at the same, I don't know where Tector stands on that, because he hasn't been playing. I don't know if he has in the AIL, but like he's been playing almost exclusively as centre for Leinster and doing quite well there. And I'm not sure. Obviously, he's getting minutes.
Ireland
He'll
do
take
see
minutes where
their Ireland do
he.
yeah.
see that backup as being your kind of utility guy, though. Do you
That's
know?
true. Yeah, no, you can make that argument, and he can cover 10, 12. I suppose from his perspective, if he's getting picked, he's getting picked, and if it gets him in the green jersey, he'll take the opportunity. But yeah, I suppose you could
And
make that
ultimately, it's
argument.
my Twitter page, so you can, I'll take all
Yeah,
the flack for it anyway, so it's fine. Lads,
I,
I might just move off because we are, as I said, we are
yeah.
tight for time, and we do have to. We're contractually obliged to talk about the other games a small bit. So, really quickly to Paris, France claimed their crown, tried once point win over Scotland. All the theatrics, all the cards and the colours and everything else. Adam, deserved victors?
yeah. I think at the start of the tournament, we would have probably said that France would have won it if it wasn't us. I think England did quite well, in this tournament as well. But I think France are deserved victors. I think even their reaction to sort of the one moment that really stood out to me was their reaction from DuPont's ACL, was to just be better. Like they almost played a way nicer brand of rugby when they were absolutely thrashing us. I think it just shows the kind of quality that France have. And like I think it was Fiku's only game on yesterday as well, but the fact that they like brought in Fiku for one game, and it's like, oh, having the quality that they have at the minute, um it only made sense if they won the Six Nations. And Scotland put up a pretty good fight though, for the first half, and then you know it sort of dismantles. But you could have probably you probably could have like predicted that happening, in that sort of sense. But yeah, France deserved winners. I don't have any issue with it. As I think Hugh Griffin said on Twitter, that he had France down to win it because no one's won a Six Nations three times in a row, and that's shown. I think what we need to focus on now is just build.
Yeah.
All the
Well,
other
that's it.
teams.
Like, because we could talk about how history is history, and I think the Six Nations is amazing in how records so rarely get broken. Like Caps record and things like that. Yeah, that's natural as the competition evolves and careers go longer, but so many records stand there for so long, and I think it's
Yeah,
part of the beauty of the competition. But at the same time, we wouldn't be doing our job if we weren't like, well, how come Ireland went from first to third? Do you know what I mean? And I think you can have that conversation in good faith. I don't think we've had a bad faith conversation yet. Wait until you see the team of the tournament, though. Then it's going to be great fun. David, just on France, like I'd love to talk about all six teams in the competition, but we just won't have time today. The best team won for 2025. I don't think anyone can have any complaints. But just kind of to focus on something Adam said there. France, when Dupont came out, and it's kind of a whisper quietly situation, they arguably were a better, more rounded team. And I would throw it to you that maybe playing an off nine brand, focusing around one man at nine. I said this on the URC pod as well this weekend. Arguably doesn't work at test level. As it'll work against a lot of teams, but not against everyone because defenses are so strong. And like, yes, defenses are strong, maybe Dupont's stronger, I don't know, but there is a case to be made that finding that balance between playmaker Dupont and playmaker Ntamak is the way forward for France.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a fair argument to make. I think you could also make an argument that at the end of the day, rugby is a it's a team sport. It's a 15-man game. There's 15 players out there, When you have a player like Antoine Dupont, it's almost incumbent on the coaching staff and the rest of the players to want as much as possible to go through him because he's so good, because he can make things happen from nothing. But at the end of the day, he can't be everywhere. And I think if everything's flowing through him, as good as he is, that becomes predictable as well, and it becomes something you. I think I put the question to Bernard Jackman once, that is he in danger of having a second season syndrome, and that people will figure out how to shut him down. Now, I was wrong, and Birch was right to say that he's good enough that that won't happen. But it does mean that you know what's going to happen. You know it's going to go through DuPont. You might not necessarily know what he's going to do, but you know it's going to go through him because that's where everything goes through. I think that the funniest, most annoying things about France is that they have this guy who's this absolute galactico of a talent at 9. He goes down. They have like 5 other ones lined up right behind him. Maxime Lucu would get into any other team in the tournament. Nolan Legorek is coming right along behind. Baptiste Saran isn't even in the squad. Like, they have a rake of them all behind him. So,
There as well, and
that's not
the
even to
the
mention the
other
old
guy.
ones who aren't getting picked anymore, like Machino and
Yeah.
the other fella, bit of Egypt. But yeah, like they have an excellent talent. I remember seeing him go down in the game and thinking, you never want to see a player get injured, but thinking this could be a good sign for
Yeah.
us because we can turn it on now. But they didn't miss a beat, and they built into it. And I thought the Scotland game showed it as well, that France, in the first half, they play well, and I thought it was a mark of respect to Scotland, but also a mark of understanding from France. This is a French team. It reminded me of playing Toulouse last year in the Champions Cup final. This is a French team playing Champions Cup rugby. They are not taking any chances. They
Yeah.
took 3 penalties in that first half. Only scored 1 try, but took 3 penalties to make sure they went in at halftime in front. And then that third quarter, the first 20 minutes after the second half, it's the exact same in the Ireland match. They just turn it on and they blitz you. And in that 20 minutes, they scored 3 tries and the game was done.
It's
Scotland
impressive.
just couldn't live with them at that stage. It scored on I took it down. They scored on 42 minutes, 56, 61, and then that was it. The game was over at that stage. There's no coming back from that kind of gap in the last 20. So it was a very spirited performance from Scotland. I let myself believe in that first half that they might actually produce an
Yeah.
upset, but by the end of the game, it just looked like par for the course. France knew what they were doing. They had complete control over the situation, and by the end, it looked like, and it was never really in doubt, that this was just a French team who've been building for a few years. And I think they'll be frustrated the last 2 seasons that Ireland got the better of them. A team with Fabien Galthie building towards a home World Cup and then crashing out in the quarterfinals. Antoine Dupont having to go off to the Olympics to win a gold medal to cheer himself up, which is a hell of a thing to do. Like, they'll have been frustrated for the years, and I felt a lot for Antoine Dupont being on the pitch. He shouldn't have been on the pitch in crutches in a big jacket. He should have been in a jersey and shorts at the end. But
Yeah.
they'll be happy at the end to have finally reached back to the top of the hill, because they were inches off of it for the last 2 seasons.
Lads, we're going to change things up because I simply do not have time at the moment to talk about Wales, England, and the Ireland under 20s. Wales, England, there's nothing really that can be said. A low point for Wales. I think we all agree there. England deserving of second spot in the table. For the Ireland under 20s, it's the opposite side of the coin. It's a very sorry end to the campaign. We hope to kick on at the World Cup. A big ask, I think, especially from a coaching standpoint. I think whatever happens, yes, you get your Spicers, your Smiths, your Usanovs, your Murphys back in. Coaching needs to improve as well, because that was a team void of confidence, void of structure. But because we're tight for time, I'm going to move on to your team of the tournament. Um, David, you have the tight 5 forwards. Adam, you have the next 5, and I have got the back 5. So, David, your tight 5 forwards first, please.
Yeah, well, I went with number 1. Largely carries the front 5 on his back. Good point. Certainly carries the position on his back at some points. Andrew Porter, I think, is still best loose head in the tournament, arguably the best loose head in the world at the moment. How long he can keep doing that for 70 minutes a game, I don't know. Number 2, leaving aside his potential red card antics in the final game, Pieta Movaka, I thought, for France, was a very strong and pushed out a Dan Sheehan, who probably would have got it if he hadn't been injured at the start of the tournament. But Movaka well earned that in the end. I'm going to go for Stewart, the England tight head, at number 3. Surprised to hear you tell me at the start of the show just how many caps that guy has. He seems like a much newer talent, but I thought he was very, very, very solid in that position. Maro Itoje, I'm going to go with number 4, captain of England. It's an interesting thing to see captain shift between 2 players, both of whom are still playing like that. But I thought Itoje carried the team well on his back, and from a a dip last year to almost winning the tournament this year. I thought he led them quite well. For a player who hasn't always been the best at staying on the right side of refs, I thought he did quite well, as playing his usual good brand of rugby. And then for number five, they shifted around a lot, but I thought Flamont, the French lock, I thought his contributions over the course of the tournament earned himself my number five spot.
I agree. My executive action here is I would sub in David Jenkins for Thibaut Flamand. When it goes live on social media, that's the only change I'd make. The next five is um it's something, but this is why we bring Adam on, because we need a fresh perspective, a fresh set of eyes. A man wearing a Gloucester jersey is obviously going to be more leaning towards, an Italian scrum half. But sorry, I've given too much away. Adam, the next five, your back row and your halfbacks, please.
I did this purely on how I sort of enjoyed watching them play. Not necessarily stat based, just based on vibes. Um, because rugby's a sport to enjoy, and I didn't really enjoy the Italian game yesterday, so but one player made me enjoy it. So right, so I went with quite a rogue shout with Cunningham South at 6. I think he's going to kick on. I think off the bench he's performed really well. Yesterday he performed really well against the poor Welsh side, but he also played well when he came off the bench against France. I think he's quite a solid all-round player. I enjoy watching him play. I think he's going to be quite a stalwart in that squad going forward. I've got Jack Morgan on the other side. Not because like I think he's just really, really consistent. He's really a bar yesterday, which was I think I would argue sort of a blip on the way that they were going up in the trajectory. I think Jack Morgan's a very good player that he led the team well. He nearly got there. I think it's very difficult captaining a team that's lost. What is it, about 18 now, or is it 17 in a row? But he still goes out. He speaks very well. And he rocks well. He's probably the driving force in that Welsh team at the minute. And they need somebody like that to build upon. Eight, we were talking beforehand. There was no real standout eight. But I'm gonna put a Caelan Doris in. Just because, as we said, on an average day, he plays very well. He plays really good. He was all around a great player. I think I might have I think I might switch out Cunningham South for maybe Jack Conan. Now I think about it. Speaking around that because he's had a very good year. In terms of sorry for changing this midway through when I was speaking through my thoughts, but Jack Conan's had a very good year, and he always has good years and Lions years. I think he was very solid. He's very bashful. He's explosive. He's going to be one of those players that I'm going to be like, I'm surprised he hasn't had more Ireland caps, but he's in that very awkward age bracket where the likes of Omani was there, Doris, Van der Fleer. There's loads of players in that back row department that should have many more caps. But there you go. At 9, I went with Pedrello. I probably butchered the name, but he's a bit of a live wire this Six Nations. Every time I watched Italy play, he was always looking up. Where we focus on Gabrici, didn't really have a good tournament, but I think that off 9 they play off really well. He made a couple of breaks yesterday, and it just was he played really heads up rugby. And at 10 I went with Finn Smith. At the start of the tournament, he wasn't even starting 10. Um, but he came in and he's looked pretty solid from the get-go, and I think he's probably talked himself into Lions contention with some of the performances that he's been putting in at 10. He just sort of looks comfortable, but I'd say with a big sort of pack in front of him, he would look comfortable. There we go.
I would agree for the most part. I'm going to be subbing in Paul Boudon, in at 6/7. I could go Francois Crowe, but Francois Crowe last year felt like the hipster's choice, and now that he's established and everyone knows how good he is, the shine has kind of taken off him, and I kind of don't really want to pick him as much anymore. For the back line, I'll start with the centers. I've gone with Tommaso Menicello and Rome Moefana. I think Hugh Jones and Ollie Lawrence and arguably Tom Jordan could all be there. Um, Geez, you could even make a case that Ben Thomas could be there, all things
Yeah,
considered, considering how his Welsh career started in context. But for me, Menicello is arguably the best. Is he arguably the best centre in Northern Hemisphere rugby? Like he's playing,
Yeah.
he's balling. Like he really is. Mo Fana,
Okay.
absolute case of I didn't recognize your game here. For the second week in a row in particular for Bordeaux back. And look, I know we'll have Adam. We might have Adam on a little bit in a few weeks to talk about Bordeaux, and myself. But look, I think this is the standout. You could easily go Hugh Jones there. Probably a little bit of an absence of Scottish guys, but that's kind of to be expected as well. The wings pick themselves, James Lowe and Louis Bielbieri. I don't think any two wingers are as important to their national side as those two, even including Doohan. I don't think he has as much importance to Scotland. And fullback, I've gone with Blair Kinghorn, King Blairhorn, whatever you want to call him. I think he's playing really well. I think he's going to make a case that Thomas Ramos might be the best 15 in world rugby, but it is to Toulouse's advantage that they might have the two best 15s in world rugby in the same club. Um, all in a nice little gift basket and playing for the love of the jersey, I am sure, because I have to keep the same energy, guys. So, David, I'll come to you first for your player of the tournament.
Well, it'll be unsurprising to most people. I had to go with LBB, Louis Bielbarret. He's phenomenal. He's a royal pain in the arse to play against, and I think he exceeded the try scoring record for this Six Nations. So yeah, all right. No notes. I'm glad I'm not. My club is in the club that's gonna have to face him in the Champions Cup.
Yeah. No, I'd agree there. Adam, your choice. Probably
I would also go with the Berry.
okay, fair.
I need to brush up my European names. Anyway, I think, yeah, as you said, he's broken his own record in try involvements. He's broken Jacob Stockdale's record of tries. And that record's been there since 2018. He's probably going to break it again next year. I think there's not much that he can do wrong. He's just incredible in attack and defense. He's your
Yeah.
complete winger. Like you can easily see how French it would be that he would probably start like center or something, do you know, in a couple of years. You know, you can argue that he can play anywhere along that back line and he'd be comfortable. He's just an incredible player.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Probably going to be a similar one. Try the tournament. Adam, what's your one?
Try the tournament. Oh, I haven't thought of this one yet. I haven't thought of it because there's like it was like a record of the most tries scored, but like all the tries that I saw were like Ireland tries where we mauled it over. Um, Try of the tournament. Can we pass it on to David? What's the thing?
You can pass
Sorry.
it on to David, yeah.
Yeah, I also hate these things, but I went with my favorite Irish side of the tournament was the one in the last. I just thought it was beautiful for these Gibson Park chipping it across, and then Hansen doing I think
Yeah,
the Jack Conan into to Keith Earls a few seasons ago, but it was Mac Hansen down to Dan Sheehan for his third try was pretty spectacular. But I thought Brex's try against France. Was it France or
Mm.
England? Where I remember England. Capuozzo breaks up the middle. Once again, a player who just creates something from nothing. There's no hole in the line there. He just finds it, shoots through the hole, runs halfway up the pitch. Brex is running the support line on the outside, and he runs once again through about three players who just can't catch him. Wouldn't expect a big man to move that fast, but he does. And it's a straight shot through the middle where there didn't appear to be a straight shot through the middle. And that was a lovely piece of play from two of Italy's very, very best players.
Yeah, I'd agree. I have two in my head, both in the Aviva Stadium. The Dan Sheehan against England. I think that's as good of a try
yeah,
as you're going to see.
Oh yeah.
Like tip
yeah,
on passes. That was his best. That was as good as Ireland attack has been the whole way through the championship.
yeah,
And in the other corner, Bielbiari, the one where France hit on the counter attack and he chips in behind. And it's just you just can't beat speed. And I think it's
yeah.
one thing that I'm enjoying. Like for this is the era of power wingers, but the electric slippery eel guys are still in vogue. David, next one. Your Lions bolter. And I can't believe we're ending a Six Nations conversation with Lions, but yeah, your Lions bolter.
Ellis me.
Oh, I like that one. That's any reason?
He looks class in a shit
Yeah,
Wales team. He looks very good.
yeah.
That's fair. Adam,
Blair Murray.
That was my
that's
other
an
one.
equally good one. To be
Yeah.
fair, that's an equally good one. I was asked this question for the ultimate bolter. on the URC podcast this morning, which you can check out at Rap Podcasts on YouTube or the United Rugby Rewind on all the podcast platforms. But I was asked this question, and we were kind of hinted, don't go for anyone that anyone is mentioning. So I said Conor Murray because the nine depth isn't great in the Northern Hemisphere. So I said Conor Murray. But outside of that, it is tough. I think Blair Murray's a great shout, to be honest. I think Jamie Osborne's a good shout because if Farrell likes him, there's that hashtag cohesion. Trying to think where else. Tom Jordan, potentially.
Yeah.
I think even for Test 23, and if you're going for who's the bolter to be in the Test 23, it's probably Ollie Chesham. I think he's really well suited. But lads, that's all we have time for. We're going to leave it there. My apologies to any Wales or England fans who tuned in to listen to. Sorry, my apologies to any England fans. I don't think
We
Wales
gave
fans tuned in to hear us
we
talk about
gave
yesterday.
we gave them compliments at the end with the
Yeah, we did.
bolters.
Well, you also called them shit, so I didn't. I would never do that. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And thank you very much to everyone who has listened across the last 6, 7 weeks, whatever it is. It has felt like an eternity, I won't lie. But as always, if you do like what you see here, please do subscribe on all good platforms. Comment down below with your player of the tournament, team of the tournament, try of the tournament, Lions, Bolter, what you thought about Ireland or France or the Ireland squad I shared on screen, whatever it may be. And you can find all the links for all my channels down below. Adam and David will surely be back on before the season is out because we've got European action to cover and URC action to cover as well. But this week, attention turns to the Women's Six Nations with a full tournament coverage to come, as well as, of course, the Champions Cup and the URC and so on and so forth. But as that is all we have time for. So until midweek, where we're back to talk about the Women's Six Nations, take it easy. So long a full.